The phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the kitchen clock, watching the second hand tick forward while my coffee went cold in front of me. I hadn't slept. Hadn't really slept in 3 days, not since the wedding. Not since I'd written that final check and watched my daughter Elena float down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my first car. The number on my phone screen was unfamiliar. Local area code. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Hale? The voice was a whisper, urgent and uncertain. Female. Yum. Speaking. This is Lydia Moore. I was the videographer at your daughter's wedding. My heart did something strange in my chest. Is there a problem with the footage? A pause. Too long. I could hear her breathing, could practically feel her weighing every word. I found something in the footage that wasn't meant for anyone to notice. Another pause, heavier than the first. Especially not you. The line went dead. I sat there in my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. The morning light was just starting to creep through the windows of my hillside home, touching the granite countertops, the custom cabinets, the appliances I'd upgraded last year. Everything in this house was chosen carefully, built to last, paid for with 40 years of sweat and smart decisions. Everything except the feeling crawling up my spine that told me the life I thought I was living was about to collapse. My name is Arthur Hale. I'm 68 years old, and until that phone call, I believed I was a successful man. I'd built Hale Construction Supply from a single hardware storefront into a regional powerhouse with 12 locations across 3 states. I'd provided jobs for hundreds of people. I'd built this house with my own architectural input, positioned it on 3 acres overlooking Redstone Heights so I could watch the sunrise every morning and remember why I worked so hard. I worked hard for family. That's what I told myself every day. Everything I built for them. My daughter Elena's wedding 3 weeks ago had been the culmination of that philosophy. The Vireo Event Hall, the premier venue in the county. 230 guests. A live orchestra. Flowers imported from Ecuador. An ice sculpture that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Elena had wanted perfection, and I'd given it to her. $63,000, not counting the rehearsal dinner or the honeymoon I'd gifted them to Santorini. If you're watching this and thinking that sounds insane, hit that subscribe button, because you haven't heard anything yet. I'd stood in the back of that hall, watching Elena marry Caleb Rowan, and felt a warmth in my chest I hadn't experienced since my wife died 7 years ago. My little girl, radiant in silk and lace, promising forever to a man who seemed to worship her. The ceremony was flawless. The reception was magical. Guests clinked glasses and danced and filled envelopes with cash. Elena had insisted, no registry, just money for their future together. The videographer had been everywhere that day. Lydia Moore? I remembered her now, small woman with expensive cameras, always moving, always capturing angles. She'd spent extra time filming, she'd said, because she wanted to create something truly cinematic. Elena had been thrilled. Now she'd called me at dawn, voice shaking, to tell me she'd found something. I looked at my phone. Looked at the number. My finger hovered over the callback button. Instead, I set it down and walked to the window. My property stretched out below me, the main house where I lived alone, and further down the slope, the guest house. The guest house where my younger daughter Marisol lived with her boyfriend Trent. Marisol had moved back home 2 years ago after her divorce, just temporarily, she'd said, until she got back on her feet. The temporary arrangement had stretched into permanence, and then Trent had moved in 6 months later. Either of them worked. Not really. Marisol did some kind of online boutique thing that seemed to generate more expenses than income. Trent had investments he was always about to cash in on. They lived in my guest house rent-free. They used my utilities. They parked in my garage. And every month, like clockwork, there was some new emergency that required my financial intervention. A car repair. A medical bill. A business opportunity that just needed a small loan to get started. I'd given it all. Every dollar they asked for. Because that's what fathers do, right? They provide. They support. They make sure their children never struggle the way they struggled. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window and wondered when providing had turned into enabling. And whether it mattered anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Dad, can we talk today? Something important. Coffee at 11? My chest tightened. I typed back. Sure, sweetheart. Where? I'll come to you. That was unusual. Elena lived 40 minutes away in the city, in the condo I'd helped her and Caleb buy as a wedding present. She never drove out here unless she needed something. I showered. I shaved. I put on the clothes I always wore, dark jeans, a button-down shirt, leather boots. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a man who'd done everything right. Built a business. Provided for his family. Honored his responsibilities. So why did I feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff? At 9:15, I got in my truck and drove into town. Redstone Heights was beautiful that morning, all tree-lined streets and expensive houses, the kind of neighborhood where people maintained their lawns like golf courses and their secrets like Swiss bank accounts. I found more visual studio in a small commercial plaza between a yoga studio and an organic market. The windows were tinted dark. A buzzer by the door. I pressed it. Mr. Hale? Lydia's voice came through the speaker, still nervous. Yes. The door unlocked with a click. Inside, the studio was dim and cool, lit mainly by the glow of computer monitors arranged on a long desk. Video editing equipment everywhere. Cables snaking across the floor. And Lydia Moore, smaller than I remembered, maybe 30 years old, wearing a university sweatshirt and an expression of pure dread. Thank you for coming, she said. I wasn't sure if I should call. I went back and forth for days. But if it were my father, I'd want to know. Know what? She moved to one of the monitors and pulled up a chair for me. I film weddings differently than most videographers. I don't just capture the ceremony and the highlights. I set up multiple cameras running continuously. I capture everything, then edit it down later into a story. Her hands were shaking as she worked the mouse. Sometimes I catch things that weren't meant to be captured. The monitor flickered to life. Wedding footage. But not the ceremony. This was earlier. A side hallway. Timestamp in the corner, 2:47 p.m. The ceremony had started at 4:30. The video showed my daughter's new husband, Caleb Rowan, in his tuxedo. Perfect hair. Perfect smile. The same smile he'd worn when he'd shaken my hand and called me, Dad, for the first time. He was kissing another woman. Not a peck. Not a friendly gesture. A deep, intimate kiss, hands in her hair, her body pressed against his. The woman wore a burgundy dress and a wedding ring that caught the light as she touched his face. I couldn't breathe. There's more, Lydia whispered. She fast-forwarded. Another angle, a different camera. The same kiss, clearer this time. The woman was laughing. Caleb was smiling. They separated, and he checked his watch casually, like he was timing how long he had before he needed to go marry my daughter. The metadata is solid, Lydia said. These cameras are synced to atomic time. This happened 90 minutes before he said I do. I stared at the frozen image on the screen. At the man I'd welcomed into my family. The man I'd given a honeymoon in Greece. The man I'd trusted with my daughter's future. Why? The word came out strangled. Why would he marry her at all? Lydia shook her head. I don't know. But Mr. Hale, I think you should ask yourself what he gained from marrying your daughter. I drove home in a fog. My hands on the wheel felt like someone else's hands. My thoughts were scattered, fragmented, refusing to form a complete picture. What did Caleb gain? Elena had a good job in marketing, sure. But nothing spectacular. She made decent money, but not enough to explain why a man would marry her while clearly involved with someone else. Unless it wasn't about her. I pulled into my driveway at 10:45, 15 minutes before Elena was supposed to arrive. I sat in my truck, engine ticking as it cooled, and forced myself to think like the businessman I'd been for 40 years. What were the assets? The condo I'd helped them buy. My name wasn't on it. The wedding gifts. Cash, untraceable once deposited. The honeymoon. Already taken. And then there was the conversation Elena had tried to have 2 days after she got back from Greece. The temporary loan she needed, $50,000, for an investment opportunity that couldn't wait. Her tone had been practiced smooth, like she'd rehearsed exactly how to ask. I'd told her I'd think about it, and she'd seemed irritated but patient. Like she knew I'd eventually say yes. Like I always did. A black BMW pulled up behind my truck. Elena's car. She stepped out wearing designer sunglasses and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, Dad," she called, walking up to embrace me. She smelled like expensive perfume and felt like a stranger in my arms. "Sweetheart." I hugged her back, noting how quickly she pulled away. "Let's go inside." We sat in my living room, the space I'd designed to be warm and welcoming, with high ceilings and windows overlooking the valley. Elena perched on the edge of the leather sofa, checking her phone twice before setting it face down on the cushion beside her. "So," she began, "I wanted to talk to you about the loan I mentioned." No small talk. No. "How are you, Dad?" No questions about my health or my life. Just straight to business. "The investment opportunity," I said carefully. "Exactly. Caleb and I have been looking at this property flip downtown. The numbers are incredible, but we need to move fast. 50,000 would give us the down payment we need, and we could pay you back within 6 months, maybe sooner." She sounded so certain. So rehearsed. "Where's Caleb today?" I asked. A flicker of something crossed her face. Annoyance? "He's working." "Why?" "Just curious. You two seemed happy at the wedding." "We are happy." Too emphatic. "We're very happy." I nodded slowly. "Good. That's good. Because I paid for something beautiful, Elena. I wanted you to have the perfect start to your marriage. And we're so grateful, Dad. Really. That's why we thought you might want to invest in our future together. You've always been so generous." Generous. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably Lydia, checking if I was okay. I ignored it. "Let me think about it," I said. Elena's smile tightened. "How long do you need?" "Because, like I said, this opportunity won't wait." "A few days." "Dad." "A few days, Elena." She stood up, frustration barely concealed now. "Fine. But don't wait too long. Some opportunities only come once." After she left, I walked down to the guest house. I needed to clear my head, needed to move, needed to do anything except sit alone with what I'd learned. The lights were on inside. I could hear music playing, bass thumping through the walls. I knocked. Marisol opened the door, looking surprised to see me. "Dad? What's up?" "Just checking in." "How are you and Trent doing?" She brightened immediately. "Actually, we're great. Trent's got this amazing opportunity coming together, a crypto investment thing that's about to." "Marisol." I kept my voice gentle. "How long are you planning to stay here?" Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "In the guest house. You said it was temporary." "Well, yeah, but we're still getting on our feet. Trent's investment should come through any day now, and then we'll." "Will you?" Silence. Behind her, I could see Trent on the couch, watching us with careful eyes. "Dad, are you okay?" Marisol's voice shifted, taking on a tone of concern that felt performative. "You seem stressed. Is this about money? Because if you're having financial trouble, we can figure something out." "I'm fine," I said. "Just thinking about the future. That's all." I walked back to the main house feeling like I was moving through water. Everything was heavy. Everything was wrong. Inside, I poured myself a bourbon I didn't want and sat at my kitchen table. I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a long time before finally opening my banking app. I checked the dates. The wedding was 3 weeks ago. 2 days after Elena and Caleb returned from their honeymoon, a new joint account had been opened under both their names at a different bank. I only knew because Elena had accidentally forwarded me a confirmation email before immediately sending a correction. "Sorry, Dad, that wasn't meant for you." At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Newlyweds opening a joint account. Normal. But now I looked at the timing and felt ice in my stomach. If you're still watching this, if you're feeling that same sick dread I was feeling, do me a favor and hit that like button. Because we're just getting started, and you need to see where this goes. I spent the rest of that day reconstructing everything. Every dollar I'd spent on the wedding. Every gift envelope I'd seen guests place in the crystal box by the reception entrance. Elena had insisted on a card box instead of a registry. "We just want help starting our life together," she'd said. "Material things don't matter." I'd thought it was sweet. Now I did the math. 230 guests. Conservative estimate of $100 per guest, though I knew many had given more. That was at least $23,000 in cash. Plus the checks, which Elena had deposited immediately. The honeymoon was already paid for. The condo was already bought. So why did they need $50,000 from me so urgently? My phone rang. Marisol's name on the screen. "Hey, Dad. Listen, I was thinking about what you said earlier, and I want you to know that Trent and I are totally willing to start contributing to expenses. We should have offered sooner. It's just been tough, you know, with the economy and everything." I closed my eyes. "That's thoughtful, sweetheart. So we were thinking maybe a few hundred a month. Would that help?" A few hundred. For a 3-bedroom guest house on 3 acres overlooking Redstone Heights. Current rental value, at least $4,000 a month. "We'll talk about it," I said. "Okay, but Dad? One thing. Trent's car died today, and we're kinda stuck. Any chance you could spot us for a rental until his investment comes through? Just like 300-400? I hung up without answering. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I walked back down to the guest house, but instead of knocking, I stood outside near the window where I could hear voices inside. "Told you to wait," Marisol was saying. "He's already suspicious about Elena's loan request." "So what?" Trent's voice, dismissive. "He's always suspicious. He still pays up." "Not always. Not anymore. He's been weird lately. He's old and lonely. He'll come around. He always does." A pause. Then Marisol again. "Did Elena say when they're planning to?" Her voice cut off. A phone ringing. I heard her answer it. "Hey, what's up?" Then, "No, he's being stubborn about it. Says he needs to think." A laugh, sharp and cruel. "I know, right? Like he has anything better to spend it on." Another pause. "Well, Caleb needs to push harder. The whole point of the wedding was to..." I stepped on a branch. It cracked like a gunshot. The voices inside stopped. I walked back to my house quickly, heart hammering, not looking back. Once inside, I locked the door and stood with my back against it, breathing hard. The whole point of the wedding was to... To what? To get money? To gain access to more of my resources? To set up some longer con I hadn't even detected yet? I thought about Elena's perfect ceremony. About Caleb's vows, delivered with tears in his eyes. About Marisol's toast, so moving that people had sobbed. All of it theater. All of it performance. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Hey Dad, have you thought any more about the investment? We really need to know by tomorrow." Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours. I looked around my house, at everything I'd built, and realized I'd been building it for ghosts. For an idea of family that maybe had never existed. Or maybe it had existed once, before my wife died, before money became the language we spoke, before I'd started trying to buy love because I didn't know how else to give it. I called my attorney. "Daniel, it's Arthur Hale. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. And I need you to clear your entire day. Daniel Cross had been my attorney for 15 years. We'd worked together on business contracts, property acquisitions, estate planning. He was sharp, ruthless when necessary, and loyal in the way that expensive lawyers are loyal to clients who pay their bills on time. "What's this about?" he asked. "Asset protection," I said. "And family law. I need options. I'll have my assistant pull your files. 9 a.m.? I'll be there." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my computer and went through everything. Bank statements. Property records. The trust I'd established years ago, naming both daughters as equal beneficiaries. The will that left them everything. By sunrise, I had a complete picture of my financial life, and more importantly, a complete picture of who had access to it, and when. The answer was, they had access to too much, and they'd get access to everything the moment I died. That thought sat heavy in my mind as I drove to Cross and Feldman law offices at 8:30 the next morning. The office was downtown, taking up the top floor of a restored historical building. Daniel met me in the conference room with coffee and a legal pad covered in preliminary notes. "Talk to me," he said. I told him everything. The wedding. The videographer. The footage. The overheard conversation. The pattern of behavior I'd been too blind or too willing to ignore. Daniel listened without interrupting, making occasional notes. When I finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers. "Legally speaking," he said, "you have several options. But I need to be clear about something first, Arthur. Once we start down this path, there's no going back to the way things were. Your relationships with your daughters will fundamentally change. Are you prepared for that?" "They already have changed," I said. "I just didn't notice." He nodded. "All right then. Here's what we can do." For the next 3 hours, Daniel laid out a strategy. It was methodical, it was airtight, and it was designed to do one thing: protect me and my assets from people who saw me as a resource instead of a person. First, the eviction. Marisol and Trent had no legal right to remain in the guest house. They were guests, not tenants. 30 days' notice, served formally. If they refused to leave, the sheriff would enforce it. Second, the trust. It needed to be restructured immediately. Instead of my daughters being beneficiaries upon my death, the trust would be irrevocable, controlled by an independent trustee, with distributions made according to specific criteria I would define. I could cut them off entirely if I chose. Third, the documentation. Everything we did would be documented, filed, and legally bulletproof. "There's one more thing," Daniel said. "The wedding footage. That's evidence of fraud, potentially. If they were planning to divorce immediately and split the wedding gifts, that's a conspiracy. We could." "No," I said. "I don't want to prosecute. I just want them out of my life." "Fair enough. But keep the evidence. You might need it." I signed papers. Made decisions. Authorized actions that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. When I left Daniel's office at noon, I was no longer a generous father. I was a man protecting himself from predators who happened to share his DNA. The eviction notice was served the next morning at 7 a.m. by Deputy Alvarez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I watched from my kitchen window as she walked down to the guest house and knocked on the door. Trent answered, shirtless and confused. I watched him read the notice. Watched his expression change from confusion to disbelief to rage. He said something to the deputy. She shook her head and pointed to the document. He disappeared inside, and moments later, Marisol burst out, wearing pajamas, hair wild, waving her phone. My phone rang. Marisol's name. I answered. "Dad, what the hell is this? There's a cop here saying we have 30 days to leave? This has to be a mistake." "It's not a mistake." Silence. Then, "You're evicting us? Your own daughter? You've lived here rent-free for 2 years, Marisol. It's time for you to find your own place." "We can't afford our own place. You know that." "Dad, what is going on? Is this about the car rental?" Because we can. This isn't about the car rental. Then what? What did we do? I could have told her about the conversation I'd overheard. About the contempt in her voice when she talked about me. About the way she and Elena had turned my generosity into a game they played. Instead, I said, "You have 30 days. Use them wisely." I hung up. She called back 17 times. I didn't answer. Elena called an hour later. "Dad, Marisol is hysterical. She says you're kicking her out? Please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." "But why? She's your daughter. She needs help. She needs to help herself. This isn't like you. Dad, are you feeling okay? Have you talked to your doctor recently? Because this seems like really erratic behavior, and I'm worried about your mental health." That's when I understood the new strategy. If they couldn't guilt me, they tried to paint me as incompetent, unstable, a danger to myself. "I'm fine, Elena. I've never been more clear-headed." "Then why are you doing this? First Marisol, and now you're not answering my calls about the investment. We need that money, Dad. We need it now." "Why?" "What? Why do you need it now? What's the urgency?" She stuttered, fumbling for words. "I told you, the property investment." "There is no property investment." More silence. Then her voice changed, dropping the concerned daughter act. "What are you talking about? I had someone check. There's no property downtown matching your description. There's no investment opportunity. So tell me the truth, Elena. What do you really need $50,000 for?" The pause stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, "We'll talk about this in person. I'm coming over tomorrow with Caleb." "This is getting ridiculous." "Fine. Come over. But you should know that I've already restructured my estate. Neither you nor Marisol are primary beneficiaries anymore. My assets are in an irrevocable trust." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "You did what?" "I protected myself. From people who see me as a bank instead of a person." "Dad, you're being insane. We're your family." "Then act like it." I ended the call. That night I sat in my living room with a bourbon and waited. I knew they'd come. Both of them. Elena and Caleb. Marisol and Trent. Maybe all together. I knew there would be shouting and tears and accusations. I was right. They arrived at 8 p.m. the next evening. 4 people, 1 mission, to make me change my mind. I let them in. We sat in my living room, them on one side, me on the other. Like a negotiation. Like a business deal gone bad. Elena started. "Dad, we need to talk about your behavior. We're all very concerned." Concerned. I let the word hang there. "You're making irrational decisions. Evicting Marisol. Changing your will. Refusing to help us. It's like you don't trust your own family." "I don't." The room went silent. Caleb leaned forward, putting on his most sincere face. "Mr. Hale, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. We all love you. We're just trying to build our futures, and we thought you'd want to be part of that." I stood up and walked to my desk. From the drawer, I pulled out a manila folder and returned to my seat. I opened it slowly, deliberately. Inside were printouts. Still frames from Lydia's footage. Timestamps clearly visible. Caleb in his tuxedo, kissing another woman. Multiple angles. No room for interpretation. I placed them on the coffee table, one by one. Elena's face went white. Caleb's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Want to explain this?" I asked calmly. Caleb recovered first. "That's not what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like you kissing another woman 90 minutes before marrying my daughter. It was a goodbye. An old girlfriend. It didn't mean anything." "The timestamp says otherwise." Elena was staring at the photos like they might catch fire. "When did you? How did you?" "The videographer found it. She thought I should know what kind of man my daughter was marrying." "You had someone spy on us?" Elena's shock was shifting to outrage. Good. Let her be angry. Anger was honest. I had someone do their job. They filmed the wedding. This is what they captured. Marisol, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Okay, so Caleb screwed up. That doesn't explain why you're punishing me. I turned to her. You want to know why? Fine. Let me tell you what I heard when I stood outside your window 3 nights ago. I quoted her words back to her. Every dismissive comment. Every calculation. Every reference to stretching Dad a few more months. Her face crumpled. You were spying on us. I was walking on my own property. You were talking loud enough to be heard. Trent stood up. This is bullshit. You're a controlling old man who can't stand the idea of his kids having their own lives. Sit down, I said quietly. Something in my voice made him comply. I looked at each of them in turn. Here's what's going to happen. Marisol and Trent, you have 30 days to vacate the guest house. That clock is already ticking. Elena and Caleb, you're going to leave right now and never ask me for money again. All of you are going to understand that my assets are no longer available to you. The trust is irrevocable. My will has been changed. Everything I built will go to charity when I die, with a small stipend for each of you, enough to prove I didn't forget you, not enough to live on. You can't do this. Elena was on her feet now, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't sad tears. They were furious tears. I already did. We could fight this. We could have you declared incompetent. We could. You could try, I said. But I have an attorney who specializes in exactly this kind of family conflict. I have documentation of everything. I have witnesses. And I have that footage. I pointed to the photos on the table. So if you want to take this to court, go ahead. See what happens when a judge learns that your marriage was potentially fraudulent and that you plan to divorce and split the wedding gifts. Because yes, I know about that too. Elena's face went from red to pale in seconds. Caleb found his voice. You're bluffing. Am I? Elena, check your joint account. The one you opened 2 days after your honeymoon. The one I wasn't supposed to know about. How much is in there? About 23,000? 25? That's the wedding money, isn't it? The cash and checks from guests who thought they were celebrating love. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Her expression told me everything. Get out, I said. All of you. Get out of my house. They left. Not quietly. Elena sobbed. Marisol screamed. Trent called me names that would have gotten his jaw broken if I were a younger man. Caleb was the last to leave. He paused at the door and turned back. You know what your problem is? He said. You can't stand the idea that people might not love you for you. You need to control everything. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. You're all alone. No, I said. I got rid of what I didn't want. There's a difference. The door slammed. I stood in my living room, surrounded by silence, and wondered if I was supposed to feel victorious. I didn't. I just felt tired. The next 30 days were a masterclass in human ugliness. Marisol and Trent tried everything to stay. First came the apologies, tearful and desperate. Then came the threats. They'd go to the media. They'd destroy my reputation. They'd claim elder abuse. I didn't budge. My attorney handled all communication. Deputy Alvarez checked in weekly to ensure compliance with the eviction notice. Elena and Caleb's marriage fell apart within 2 weeks. I heard through mutual acquaintances that the woman in the video was Caleb's business partner, that they'd been together for 3 years, and that the entire wedding had been a scheme to access my wealth. They'd planned to divorce within a year, split the money, and move on. Elena filed for divorce on day 16. The legal fees consumed most of the wedding money. Caleb's business partner left him. The condo I'd helped them buy went up for sale at a loss. I felt nothing watching it unfold. Not satisfaction. Not regret. Just a strange, distant observation, like watching a storm from far away. On day 29, one day before the eviction was to be enforced by the sheriff, Marisol and Trent moved out. They took everything they could carry and left the guest house trashed, holes punched in walls, garbage everywhere, a final middle finger to the father who dared to set boundaries. I hired a cleaning crew and a contractor. Within a month, the guest house looked better than it had in years. I considered renting it out. Instead, I left it empty. 3 months after the wedding, I was sitting on my deck at sunrise when my phone rang. Lydia Moore's name on the screen. "Mr. Hale, I hope I'm not calling too early. I'm up. I wanted to check on you. See how you're doing." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I'm glad. I've felt guilty about what I started." "Don't. You gave me information I needed. What I did with it was my choice." A pause. Then, "What did you do with it?" So I told her. All of it. The eviction, the trust, the confrontation, the aftermath. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That took courage," she finally said. "Did it? I'm not sure. Might have just been self-preservation. Those can be the same thing." We talked for another 20 minutes. About her work, about my business, about life in general. It was the first real conversation I'd had in months that didn't involve strategy, or legal maneuvering, or emotional manipulation. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Over the next few months, I did things I hadn't done in years. I volunteered at a veterans center downtown. I started taking guitar lessons. I joined a book club. I traveled to places I'd always meant to visit but never made time for. I didn't hear from my daughters. Not on my birthday. Not on Christmas. Not ever. Some people might call that tragic. The end of a family. A father cut off from his children. But here's what I learned in that silence. There's a difference between family and relatives. Family is built on love, on respect, on genuine care for one another's well-being. What I had with Elena and Marisol was biology and obligation, dressed up in the costume of family but hollow underneath. The truth didn't break my family. It freed me from pretending I had one. I'm 69 now. I live alone in a house I love, in a town I've grown to appreciate in new ways. I have friends I've made, activities I enjoy, a life that feels authentically mine rather than a performance for people who were waiting for me to die so they could collect their inheritance. Sometimes I think about what could have been different. If I'd set boundaries earlier. If I'd demanded more than gratitude. If I'd taught my daughters about work and responsibility instead of just providing everything they asked for. But mostly I don't think about it at all. I think about the guitar chords I'm learning. About the volunteer work that gives me purpose. About the trips I'm planning and the books I'm reading and the sunrise I watch every morning from my deck. I built a good life. I'm still building it. And I'm doing it for myself now, not for ghosts. If you've watched this whole story, if you've stayed with me through every painful revelation and hard decision, thank you. Leave a comment below and tell me, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have kept playing the game, hoping things might change? And if this story resonated with you, if you know someone who needs to hear it, share it. Because sometimes the hardest thing to learn is that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival.